Welcome to the Rice Field Archive. This time, we return to a time of war and legend, when a troubled land waited for a sign, and something mysterious began to stir beneath the surface of the ordinary world. This is the legend of Sword Lake. So settle in, and let this old tale begin. In those days, the Ming invaders had placed Vietnam under their cruel rule. They treated the people like grass beneath their feet, carrying out so many brutal acts that anger burned deep in every heart. At that time, in the region of Lam Sơn, a rebel army had risen up against them. But in the beginning, their forces were still weak, and many times they were scattered by the enemy. Seeing this, the Dragon Lord, Long Quan, decided to lend them a divine sword so they could drive out the invaders. At that time, in Thanh Hóa, there was a fisherman named Lê Thái. One night, as usual, Tan cast his net at a quiet riverbank. When he pulled the net in, he suddenly felt it grow heavy. Secretly, he was delighted, thinking he must have caught a large fish. But when he reached in, he discovered that it was only a piece of iron. He threw it back into the water and cast his net again in another place. The second time he pulled up the net, it was heavy again. To his surprise, the same piece of iron had slipped into his net once more. He picked it up and threw it back into the river. But the third time, that same piece of iron was still caught in the net. Finding this strange, Tan brought it close to the fire to take a better look. Suddenly, he cried out to himself, "Ha ha! A sword blade!" Later, Tan joined the Lam Sơn uprising. Many times, he risked his life on the battlefield to fight the invaders. One day, the commander Lê Loi and several of his followers came to Tan's house. Inside the dark room, the piece of iron suddenly began to shine brightly from a corner of the house. Amazed, Lê Loi stepped closer, picked it up, and saw the words Tuan Tien, meaning in accordance with heaven, carved deeply into the blade. Yet none of them knew that it was a sacred treasure. One day, while being chased by the enemy, Lê Loi and his generals fled in different directions. As he passed through a forest, Lê Loi suddenly saw a light shining from the top of a banyan tree. He climbed up and discovered that it was a jeweled sword hilt. Remembering the sword blade at Lê Than's house, Lê Loi took the hilt and tucked it into his belt. 3 days later, Lê Loi met his companions again, including Lê Than. When they fitted the blade into the hilt, a wondrous thing happened. The two pieces matched perfectly. Lê Loi then told everyone what had happened. After hearing the story, they were filled with joy and excitement. Lê Than raised the sword to the height of his head and said to his commander, "The heavens must have entrusted you, my lord, with a great task. We vow to offer our flesh and bones and to follow you and this divine sword in order to repay our debt to the nation." From that day on, the spirit of the rebel army grew stronger and stronger. In Lê Loi's hand, the divine sword swept across every battlefield and struck terror into the hearts of the Ming army. Before long, the fame of the Lam Sơn forces spread everywhere. They no longer had to hide in the forests. Instead, they boldly went out in search of the enemy. They no longer suffered hunger as before, for the food stores they captured from the invaders supplied their army. The divine sword opened the way for them to keep fighting until not a single enemy soldier remained on the land. 1 year after the Ming invaders had been driven away, Lê Loi, now the sovereign of the country, rode in a dragon boat around Tavong Lake near the capital. On that occasion, Long Quan sent a golden turtle to reclaim the divine sword. When the boat reached the middle of the lake, a large turtle suddenly rose from the blue water, lifting its head and shell above the surface. By the king's order, the boat slowed down. The king stood aboard and noticed that the sword at his side was moving. The golden turtle was not afraid of people. It rose even higher and came close to the royal boat. Floating on the surface of the water, it spoke, "Your Majesty, return the sword to Long Quan." Hearing this, the king suddenly understood. He reached down and drew the sword from its sheath. In an instant, the divine sword left the king's hand and flew toward the golden turtle. Quick as a flash, the turtle opened its mouth and caught the blade. Even after the sword and the turtle sank beneath the water, people could still see a faint trail of light shimmering under the green surface of the lake. When the boats of the royal officials finally caught up with the dragon boat, the king immediately told them what had happened. Long Quan lent us the divine sword so we could defeat the Ming invaders. Now that the country is at peace, he has sent the turtle to take it back. And from that day onward, the lake began to be known as Sword Lake, or Hoàn Kiếm Lake, the lake of the returned sword. And with that, the tale draws to an end, the timeless legend of Sword Lake. If this Vietnamese legend left an impression on you, please consider subscribing for more myths, folktales, and forgotten stories from Vietnam and beyond. Until our next tale, thank you for listening.